Afritruth, the untold story.
Every great book has a twist. And in the greatest book of all, the Bible, Africa isn't a side note. It is prophecy. From Eden to Ethiopia, from Solomon to Sheba, Africa's destiny has always been written. Subscribe now, because this is the part of the Bible they never taught you. The story of Africa is not just written in history books. It is written in the oldest book of all. If you listen closely, you will hear our rivers, our mountains, our kingdoms echoing through the verses of the Bible. Not as footnotes, not as shadows, but as living, breathing part of the story of God and humanity. From the very beginning, the book of Genesis speaks of a river that flowed out of Eden and split into 4 streams. One of those rivers, the Gihon, is said to wind through the land of Cush. And Cush, in ancient times, was not a faraway place in Asia. It was here, in Africa. Many scholars agree that Cush refers to what we now call Ethiopia, Sudan, and parts of East Africa. The Bible says that land was rich in gold, and the gold was good. It spoke of bdellium, a fragrant resin, and onyx stone. These were not the luxuries of some distant dreamland. They were the treasures of African soil. Thousands of years later, another African name appears, the Queen of Sheba. A ruler from a land of great wealth and wisdom. She traveled with a caravan so grand it stretched across the desert, camels loaded with spices, gold, and precious stones. Her destination: the court of King Solomon. Her mission: to test him with questions, to trade with him, to form alliances between kingdoms. The Bible tells us she came from the veins of the earth, but history and archaeology tell us that her kingdom likely stretched across modern-day Ethiopia and Yemen. And her gifts to Solomon were not mere tokens. They were offerings from the overflowing wealth of her people. Africa appears again in the New Testament. When Jesus carried his cross toward Golgotha, a man was pulled from the crowd to help him, Simon of Cyrene. Cyrene was a city in North Africa, in present-day Libya. It was an African who carried the cross of Christ when he could carry it no longer. Then there is the Ethiopian eunuch in the book of Acts, the high official serving the Queen of Ethiopia, reading the prophet Isaiah in his chariot. The apostle Philip explained the scriptures to him, and there on the road, the Ethiopian asked, "What prevents me from being baptized?" And Philip baptized him immediately, in the water by the roadside. This was one of the very first recorded conversions to Christianity, and it happened in Africa before the gospel reached the shores of Europe. These are not accidents. They are not random mentions. They are signs that Africa has been part of God's plan since the beginning. And it did not end with the Bible. The oldest Christian churches in the world still stand in Ethiopia and Egypt, carved into rock, built in the desert, guarded through centuries of invasion and war. Long before colonial missionaries arrived, the people of Africa already worshipped the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We already knew the songs. We already sang praises in our own languages. Our ancestors understood something the world has forgotten. That wealth is not only in gold and silver. Wealth is in covenant. Wealth is in knowing who you are and whose you are. Some elders say that this is why God hid so much of the world's treasures here, not to make us proud, but to remind us of our role in His great story. That Africa was not made to be the footstool of the nations, but a pillar in the temple of God's design. And yet, the enemy knows the value of a thing. If you cannot steal the gold, you will try to make the owner forget it is there. If you cannot take the land, you will try to make the people doubt its worth. And that is what has been done to us for centuries. But when you know your place in the story, the real story, you cannot be fooled forever. The Bible connection reminds us. We are not outsiders looking in. We are not beggars at someone else's feast. We are part of the foundation, part of the prophecy, part of the promise. The wars for Africa so have changed. Once, you could hear them coming, the thunder of hoofs, the crack of muskets, the boom of cannons. Today, they arrive in silence. Not with gunpowder, but with paperwork. Not with flags, but with contracts. Not with ships in the harbor, but with clauses hidden deep in loan agreements. The battlefield is no longer just the coastlines and the savannas. It is boardrooms in glass towers. It is secret meetings in hotel suites. It is whispered deals between men in suits who may never step foot on African soil, but whose pens can redraw the fate of millions. They call it investment. They call it partnership. But we have learned to read the fine print. A loan that sounds generous today comes with an interest rate that will chain our grandchildren. A foreign company promises jobs, but leaves us with empty minds and poisoned rivers. A development project arrives with glossy brochures, but somehow, the profits always fly out faster than they came in. Oil fields in the Niger Delta are guarded not just by fences, but by men with guns, and they do not answer to the people of the land. In the heart of Congo, miners dig for cobalt with their bare hands, while the companies that buy it are worth billions. In some places, a worker earns less in a month than the mineral they dig is worth in a single minute on the global market. And yet, on the evening news, you will hear smiling leaders announce historic trade agreements. You will see ribbon-cutting ceremonies, photo ops, and handshakes. But behind those smiles is a truth as old as empire. Control the resources, and you control the people. Colonialism never really left. It simply changed its wardrobe. The old flags were lowered, but the chains became invisible, made of debt, dependence, and destruction. And when an African leader tries to change this, when they push for fair contracts, when they demand local ownership of mines, when they speak of keeping our oil and gas profits at home, history shows us what often happens next. Suddenly, there is political unrest. Suddenly, there are protests, coups, or humanitarian interventions. And somehow, the leader who stood for the people is removed. We have seen this movie too many times to pretend it is coincidence. But there is another side to this fight. While governments sign deals, there is a rising wave of Africans who refuse to be silent. Journalists risking their lives to expose corruption. Community leaders standing in front of bulldozers to protect sacred lands. Young people using the internet to tell the truth, bypassing the old channels of propaganda. The new fight is not just about stopping what is wrong. It is about building what is right. We must own our resources, manage them wisely, and invest in our own industries. Because if we keep sending raw materials away and buying them back as finished products, the cycle will never end. The enemy is no longer just outside. Sometimes, it wears our own face. Sometimes, the ones signing away our future speak our language, eat our food, and call themselves our brothers. That is why the new fight must also be a fight for integrity. And here is the truth they do not want us to realize. Africa is not poor. It has never been poor. It is only mismanaged. The day we manage our wealth with wisdom and unity, the game will change forever. If the prophecy is true, then Africa's pain was never punishment, it was preparation. And the final chapter. That's part 4, Africa's wake-up call. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the end of the story.
Afritruth, the untold story continues.